like that's maybe what we have for now. So I would go ahead and start if you like.
Okay. Good evening. Welcome to the May 11th, 2023 meeting of the Lower Russian River MAC. My name is Debbie Ramirez, and I'm acting as clerk of the council for today's meeting. Prior to Chair Nichols commencing the meeting, I would like to go over a few housekeeping items. Restrooms are in the back right here. There's through that white door, and the chair will use a roll call method to allow each member to have a clear turn to speak to each item. As stated on the meeting agenda, we are accepting written comments for all public comment. You may submit written comments via the comment cards provided on the table in the back. And then you can drop them here in this basket. If you're participating remotely, you can submit comments to Leo Chi, which is LEO.CHYE at Sonoma on the agenda. Written comments received prior to the public comment period for the agenda item you wish to comment on will be read into the record. If a comment is received after the agenda item is heard, but before the close of the meeting, the comment will still be included as a part of the record of the meeting, but will not be read into the record. We will be holding this meeting fully hybrid with one council member attending remotely pursuant to AB 2449 teleconferencing requirements. Please bear with us if we face any technology issues, as this is the first time that we've been fully hybrid. And Leo Chi will address the Zoom attendees now.
Great, thank you. Give me one moment. So if you are joining us from Zoom and would like to submit public comment, please raise your hand on the application or on your phone by dialing *9 during the public comment periods. You will then be unmuted for your public comment. If you have technical issues, please feel free to contact me directly by email at leo.chi@sonoma-county.org to note that you would like to make public comments so that you may be recognized. For detailed public comment instructions, please reference the meeting agenda or reach out to me directly.
I will now turn the meeting over to Chair Nichols.
Thank you, and welcome to Casadero. I'm Mike Nichols, the chair for this evening's meeting. The agenda states that the public may listen and provide written and verbal comment on the agenda. And I have some introductory remarks prior to the commencement of the meeting. First off, we have a full agenda this evening and want to encourage comment from all wishing to speak. So there will be time limits on public comment. Council members' comments will be limited to one round of questions or comments on each of the agenda items. The Russian River MAC is committed to civil engagement. All are encouraged to engage in respectful communication that supports freedom of speech, values diversity of opinion, and the River MAC members, staff, and the public are encouraged to create an atmosphere of respect and civility where MAC representatives, county staff, and public are free to express their ideas within the time and content parameters established by the Brown Act and the MAC standard parliamentary procedures. Adhere to time limits for each individual speaker in order to allow as many people as possible the opportunity to be heard on as many agenda items as possible. Establish and maintain a cordial and respectful atmosphere during discussions. Foster meaningful communication free of attacks of a personal nature and/or attacks based upon age, disability, class, education level, gender identity, occupation, race, and/or ethnicity, or sexual orientation. Listen with an open mind to all information, including dissenting points of view regarding issues presented to the MAC. Recognize that it is sometimes difficult to speak at meetings, and out of respect for each person's perspective, allow speakers to have their say without comment or bodily gestures, including booing whistling, or clapping. Thank you. I will now call the meeting to order by asking the clerk to conduct a roll call vote of committee members present.
Chair Mike Nichols,
Present.
Betsy Van Dyke. Here. Patty Thayer. Here. Joe Roca,
Here.
Nick Pereira,
Here.
Lisa Nelson.
I'm here. Do I need to make my AB 2449 statement?
That is coming up after this.
Okay. All right. Here, present.
Vesta Cope Stakes. Here. Alice Teeter. Here. And Pip Marquez de la Plata is absent today.
Next item on business is a present pledge of allegiance. I thought we would have a flag here. It's in the other room.
Can we imagine it?
Apologize for that oversight.
I can put one on your screen if that's helpful, Mike. And then I'll go ahead and find one for the computer screen, and then Mike, I'm not sure how you want to handle it, but Andrea Buffa.
It's beautiful.
Okay,
so you're set on the flag, and
We haven't had a big one like.
and the state flag as well. Yeah.
All right. Okay.
So, with the pledge, who would like to stand up?
That's
Thank you, pledge. That's that.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, prior to any action being taken, Lisa Nelson is attending remotely under AB 2449, Just Cause Teleconferencing Regulations. Will advise the council of her need to participate remotely due to providing care to her wife. Lisa?
To comply with AB 2449, I'm alone in a room. I'm participating via audio and video, and I'm participating remotely for the just cause of caring for a spouse. Thank you.
Welcome, thank you. The next item is the approval of agenda. May I have a motion to accept the agenda as stated? I turn to staff for public comment.
A motion to accept the agenda as stated.
I'll second. It's been moved and seconded that we accept the agenda as stated. We need to call for a roll call vote because we're operating under 2449.
Chair Mike Nichols,
Yes.
Betsy Van Dyke,
Yes.
Patty Thayer,
Yes.
Joe Roca,
Yes.
Nick Pereira,
Yes.
Lisa Nelson,
Yes.
Vesta Cope Stakes,
Yes.
Alice Teeter.
Yes.
Thank you. Next item is statement of conflict of interest. At this time, are there any committee member conflicts of interest in this evening's business? If so, please state so now. Hearing none, we can move on to the consent calendar. Now that the meeting is called to order, I'll move on to the May 11th, 2023 consent calendar. As a reminder, the committee will be voting on all items on the consent calendar as a single item. If you have a brief question about a particular item, staff can address it. If, however, you would like to discuss any of the items in greater detail, I would ask that a member request that the item be pulled from the consent calendar. Do any members wish to pull an item from the consent calendar? Seeing none, we have some public comment. Leo, is there any public comment on?
so if there are any members of the public who are attending online who would like to comment at this time, please raise your hand. Again, you can use the raise hand function in Zoom, or if you are phoning in, you may press *9. And it does look like everybody is in through the Zoom app, so I'm just in the future going to let people know that they can use the raise hand functionality. I don't see any hands raised at this time. I think you can proceed.
Very good, then we can ask for a motion to approve the consent calendar. Did we get a motion to approve that? I don't think so.
No.
So call for a motion.
I'll.
That's it, move.
motion to-
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Call for the roll call vote.
Chair Mike Nichols,
Yes.
Betsy Van Dyke,
Yes.
Patty Fair,
Yes.
Joe Roca,
Yes.
Nick Pereira,
Yes.
Lisa Nelson,
Yes.
Vesta Cook Sticks.
Yes.
And Alice Teeter. Yes.
Very good. Thank you very much. Now we're moving on to council member comment on matters not listed on the agenda. Comments are restricted to matters within the council's jurisdiction. Please be brief and limit speaking comments to 1 minute. So calling for round robin on this, any council member comments on matters not listed on the agenda? Yes, Vesta.
Well, first of all, I want to tell you that public infrastructure is coming through with one of my greatest wishes, which is they are cleaning up the vegetation on the side of the road on River Road. And I got so excited seeing that yesterday. Thank you, public infrastructure. And next, I hope that they clean up Mirabelle Park and Ride because it is also a hazard and dirty and a mess. So thank you for getting out there and doing that. Also, one of the things that the Lower River MAC Cleanup Committee is doing is on May 21st, Sunday, starting at 9 a.m. We are working with Forestville Chamber of Commerce and anybody who wants to come out and help us. We are cleaning up downtown Forestville in preparation for the Forestville Youth Park Barbecue Parade. The parade starts at 10 a.m. on the June 3rd. So we have basically 2 weeks to get that town cleaned up and ready for that. And I want to appreciate everybody who comes out, bring your own tools, your gloves. The chamber is paying for dump fees and water for us to drink. And then on the June 6th, the Forestville Farmers Market will start. There's also a farmers market that will be starting in Durnville. And we will be having a Lower River MAC table there for anybody who wants to get familiar with the what the MAC does. And that is our communications committee will be doing that. And I will be at the Fire Safe Forestville table because I'm trying to get Fire Safe Forestville going, moving it forward. And speaking of fire, we have Forestville now has a chipper that is thanks to the Safer West County got a grant for our own chipper. And if you go to the saferwestcounty.org website, you can sign up for having a chipper come to your property, your neighborhood, get the cleanup, get the piles all lined up, and they will come out and chip what you have and then leave the chip for you to use as mulch. So that's a big thing.
That's a agenda item a little bit later on.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
because you're
thank you.
covering
Right,
the other
right.
parts of that. Okay, cool. All right, yes, that's it.
Very good. Any other comments? Yes.
Nick was first.
Oh, Nick, I'm sorry.
But I just wanted to let people know that we're working on the Durnville Vets Hall ad hoc committee, just haven't connected the dots. And so we'll be looking for community support. I'm going to be reaching out to a few members of the community that we've identified already. And if anybody is interested, you can reach me through the MAC, and I'm interested in anybody who would like to volunteer.
Thank you.
Just tagging on to Vesta's comment, thanking infrastructure for getting to the River Road high vegetation. It's been awesome. One of the things we're still looking for communication on is that they got ahead of us. We've been doing the Adopter Road and road cleanups. They got 3 days ahead of us for the Trenton to Trenton stretch about a week ago. And they just this morning did the stretch through Hacienda, which we're cleaning on Saturday. So if we could get a schedule posted of when those county vegetations happens, then we can prevent all that microplastic being generated and make our job about 10 times easier. So we just need a schedule of when high weed mowing, and we've been told over and over, there's no way that that can happen because we don't have the staff, but.
I'd like to direct staff. I'd like to direct staff and to get in touch with Janice Thompson over PI, who would be in charge of providing oversight for mowing, as well as other infrastructure issues. We too here on Casadero Highway, for the first time in several years, had our highway right of way mowed. And it was appropriate because it was the week before the bicycle race. And the weeds had encroached across the fog line, so it was creating a narrow situation for us. So I'm glad that PI has just really been extremely supportive through the storm issues, the road repair issues, and so forth. So that kind of concludes my comment. Any other further comments from board council members? Saying none.
I do, Mike. I do, Mike. Sorry.
Sorry.
Can
I'm
you hear
sorry.
me?
Yes, I can.
Can you hear me okay? Okay.
I can.
I wanted everyone to know I attended the Digital Equity and BEAD Regional Planning Workshop on April 28th, representing the MAC, and Scott Farmer from the Coast MAC was there. BEAD stands for Broadband Equity, Access, and Deployment, and it's going to provide the distribution of the billions of dollars to expand high-speed internet access across the county. We're the North Bay North Coast region, and this is the Middle Mile Broadband Initiative, which will hopefully build the physical infrastructure required to enable internet connectivity for homes, businesses, and community institutions. So it was quite interesting, and I'm happy to be a part of that.
Thank you very much, Lisa. And as a follow-up on that, District 5 of Caltrans just published a mapping for Sonoma County, and we have, I believe, 180 miles of middle mile that's going into Sonoma County at a cost of $78 million. So, any further comments from folks? Then let's move on to public comment on this item. On matters not listed on the agenda. Comments are restricted to matters within the council's jurisdiction, and please be brief and limit spoken comments to 2 minutes. We'll open this up for public comment. Seeing none present here in the building, then Leo, do you have public comment?
I do. So again, at this time, I would invite any members of the public who wish to comment on this item to raise their hand, and I will also check my inbox for written comments. I do see, though, that Andrea Buffa already has her hand up, so I'm going to go ahead and click to allow her to speak. I'll also set the clock for 3 minutes, and I'll put the clock on the screen for the final minute if needed. Andrea, you should be allowed to talk. You should be able to go ahead at this time.
Thank you. Thank you so much for taking remote public comment. My name is Andrea Buffa, and I live in Monterey, and I'm calling in to ask the MAC to please urge our county officials to provide us with an update on what's happening with the repairs that we are expecting on Moscow Road between Monterey and Duncan's Mills. We haven't gotten an update since March, and we have heard the contract will be going out to bid in June, but we would really like to get definitive information in our community about that, as well as when the construction is expected to begin and to end. You know, and as you've heard before, like, we still have the same concerns several months later, that we don't have an adequate way to evacuate for flood or fire emergencies. Since we have sleds on both ends of Moscow Road, our emergency vehicles are having to navigate this very narrow one-lane passage, you know, and we're about to come into the summer season with the influx of tourists and then fire season. So we would really appreciate your help in getting an update either to this, you know, at an upcoming meeting, or just urging our county officials to provide us like a written update to our community. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any further comments, Leo?
There's no other hands raised at this time. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Staff, perhaps you might have an update on that later on in the meeting.
I was planning on presenting it in my supervisor reports.
Okay, very good, thank you. The next item then would be moving for a process for consideration of action items, staff presentation. I'll ask staff to make a staff presentation on item number 7 on the agenda regarding consideration of letter of support for AB 817 by the subject person Pacheco. This is regarding local government open meetings. This item came up. There are copies of the draft letter for folks to review, and for board members here, hard copies. So I'm opening this up for discussion, and I'm going to ask for committee members' comments and questions. In order to provide an equal opportunity for committee members to provide comment without everyone talking over one another, I'll call the name of each committee member. If he or she would like to make a comment or ask a question, they can proceed. After one round of comments and questions, I'll then ask for public comment on this item. So I'll put this up with alternate Alice Teeter. Do you have any comments?
No comment.
None? Betsy Van Dyke?
No comments.
No comments. Joe?
Yeah, I think it'd be helpful to get a brief explanation of what this is. I don't expect the public to know. And I think it would be very helpful to understand why we support it.
That's a legitimate question. If you,
Yes.
staff, if you be chair,
I-
answer that, please.
I'm happy to, and this came up in agenda setting too, so Lisa may want to chime in on this. But what AB 817 is aiming to do would be to allow bodies that are composed exclusively of appointed members to meet via teleconferencing without as it was during the pandemic with those Brown Act rules, without having to do all of these protocols. Jump through all of these hoops, because the idea behind it is that appointed bodies are not making any final decisions. They're of advisory nature. And it certainly, what was found during the pandemic was that it allowed people, they're going to be doing a fire drill right now at 6 o'clock. So Lisa, can you hear us okay?
I can.
Okay. So what AB 817 would allow is the ability to continue with teleconference meetings without having an in-person element for bodies that are composed exclusively of appointed members.
And clarifying question, why would the MAC support that when our goal is to involve the maximum number of people? I mean, not everyone is able to join advisory. There are many people who don't have access and want to have the ability to do that. So why would we support something that is a little more restrictive? I understand that there's flexibility in that.
The letter outlines that it makes it easier for people to become members. Both of our MACs are pretty spread out, and it's difficult for people to attend. So it wouldn't necessarily eliminate in-person meetings. It would just allow council members that cannot travel to be able to participate.
Great, thank you very much.
I think that answers the question. Is that very good? Any other questions from? Nick, did you have a comment?
No.
Lisa, do you have a comment that you want to?
No, if Joe has, if Joe's question's been answered by Debbie, I'm good.
There.
Oh,
There.
Yes, just for further clarification, because I appreciate the questions from Joe. Does our support of this bill, basically, we're asking that we go back to the rules that were in play during the pandemic, or is there something different? Because obviously Lisa is able to participate remotely under the current structure. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands why we need something more, or we are supporting something more than what we've got right now.
Yes.
So right now Lisa can, because she has an emergency or a just cause circumstance. There's very limited circumstances. It can't just be, I don't want to drive at night, and it's limited to only twice per year.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question? Okay. Number 6.
I'm impressed with this. I'm happy that it makes it more inclusive, more easy to participate. There are so many people who couldn't participate because they couldn't physically say drive out to Casadero. so they can participate via a Zoom meeting. To me, this is opening it up in a marvelous way. That's one of the benefits that came out of COVID. There are numerous benefits that came out of COVID. I'm so sorry for that, but nonetheless, this is one of them that allows more participation, both in terms of the public, but for us as members of a MAC, that then anybody can be on the MAC if they're appointed or elected and still be able to participate in these meetings, even if they can't physically get to a meeting. I think that's wonderful. I mean, unless I read this wrong, that's what I get from it.
Thank you. We'd like to open this now open for public comment. Leo?
So at this time, I want to invite any members of the public who wish to comment on this item to raise their hand. And I do see we now have a phone call in. So if you're calling in on the phone, it's *9 to raise your hand. Additionally, I'm checking my inbox for any comments, which I do not see at this time. So, Chair, I believe that there's no hands raised, so that should conclude public comment.
Good, I'll now entertain a motion to approve the staff draft letter in support of AB 814. They approved. I'm moved by Nick and seconded. I'll call the name of each committee member to see if there's any further discussion. Any discussion from any committee members? Further discussion? Very good. All right. Call for the roll call vote.
Chair Mike Nichols,
Yes.
Betsy Van Dyke. Yes. Patty Fair.
Yeah.
Joe Bertha,
Yeah.
Nick Ferrera,
Yes.
Lisa Nominson,
Yes.
Vesta Postage,
Yes.
Alice Peter.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Good, thank you. It's with pleasure that I introduce Supervisor Hopkins for the next agenda item, and pleasure to have you out in Cazadero again. It's been a while.
Yes, I was remembering, well, the last time at least that we had the MAC meeting, I think it must have been about 125 degrees.
Right, we supplied water.
Yeah, we were just passing on water because it was so hot when Senator McGuire was out here. That was a great packed meeting.
Right.
So I'm happy to answer any questions, but my updates are primarily around infrastructure. So first I wanted to address Moscow Road, which someone brought up earlier during the public comments. Actually bids are already out, so it's actually open for bid submissions at this point in time. That bid submission process will close on June 5th. And then we will obviously try to award a bid as quickly as possible because we do anticipate moving forward this construction season. That's going to be a fast turnaround time. But so it is actually moving forward in the process. Contractors are welcome to submit their bids anytime between now and June 5th. And so the grade will close on June 5th. I also wanted to mention that we do actually have a consultant on board working on the East Austin Creek Bridge design. So that project is also moving forward, and that was an allocation of, I believe, flood mitigation funds. Is that where we ended up taking the funds from for that project to address that as a critical emergency evacuation route? And then the other sort of infrastructure update that I wanted to provide is that we will be hosting a meeting to try to address the tremendous challenge of looking at unreinforced masonry structures that are currently housing both our sheriff's substation as well as our Cornville fire station. And of course, recognizing that this building also falls in that category and Monterey does. But we want to sort of start with that issue in Guerneville because the state of the Guerneville Sheriff's Substation is deteriorating rapidly. And just to sort of share a little glimpse of, I don't think I've shared this with the map yet, but I did meet Sheriff Ingram and Johannes out there, not once, but twice. And a few months ago, there was a leak coming through the roof, but it was determined that actually, the sort of ceiling, so they kind of took it apart and there was a whole bunch of asbestos and rotten wood up there. And so there was full on hazmat gear with general services going in and trying to clean that out. And then what they did for the deputies was after the general services folks came in with their hazmat suit, just literally taped plastic over it, the deputies didn't feel super safe about that situation. And my understanding is there has moved forward for the, it's just another sign that building is really deteriorating rapidly and is essentially beyond its useful life. And so once we have that meeting, we will certainly circle up with sort of vets building ad hoc to continue the conversation. But wanted to start, we'll be meeting with Chief Pine as well as Sheriff Ingram and Johannes to convene that conversation and just sort of start that process. And we had previously submitted for what we are calling a Western Emergency Resource Center or WORK. And that is kind of, again, the concept that we would be looking at of how do we sort of warehouse emergency services. And in addition to providing a new sheriff substation and a new fire station in Guerneville, it could potentially also provide community meeting space, also, an incident command center for flood response and disaster response more generally. But the idea would be to sort of make something that is bigger and grander than we currently have, which would then enable us to potentially access federal funding for that kind of a project, because it would be sort of new and different and provide expanded and enhanced services. So yeah, so those are kind of my main updates. And then I also just want to sort of mention, because I am on the fire services ad hoc for the Board of Supervisors, that FSWAG, which is the Fire Services Working Group, a group of fire chiefs, which in West County include Chief Pine as well as Chief Shepley, Carey, I believe is his last name. I just always like his last name is not as easy to say as Pine. So are part of, and I received sort of briefings on how that's going. That also provides potential infrastructure fund for new fire stations. So if you are sort of not part of Sonoma County Fire District or sort of Gold Ridge Fire Protection District, I would encourage you to really reach out and make sure that your fire agency, fire department is involved in that process with FSWAG, because my understanding is that they're getting close to finalizing those numbers and that funding allocation. And I really want to make sure the Casvero and of course the North Coast are well represented and receive the funding that they need for the critical infrastructure needs that we have up here that are unmet. So just wanted to flag that and mention that the process is going forward. They do plan to gather signatures for an initiative that we place on the March ballot. And they are, I think, really doing their absolute best to meet everyone's needs, recognizing that it's a finite pot of money. But they're really trying to reach out, and I'm sure that they're hearing from all the different fire departments around the county. So I think those are all my updates. Am I missing anything major? We did okay, great. I'm happy to answer any questions on any of those subjects or any other county subjects that you have questions about.
I'm sure there are going to be a lot of questions, Supervisor. So we'll start off with alternate Peter. Do you have any questions? Betsy?
I'm wondering if are you planning to tear the vets hall down?
It is at a point where that is pretty much the only likely outcome. And I haven't actually reviewed the reports, but I'm hoping that Nick gets a chance to review it if you haven't already. I haven't seen it, but I know that Sonoma County Public Infrastructure did go through an analysis of the building and also of potential relocation sites. My understanding is partly because of its location of the floodplain, it's been ineligible for a lot of the funding opportunity that other vets buildings have had, and that it's essentially sort of all the walls are kind of going this way, and that it was built on, it sounds like, just like old growth redwoods were sort of put down as like a part of the foundation, and they lasted for a really long time, but now it is just really subsiding and kind of falling into the river, and so it does really need to be torn down and rebuilt at this point. And my hope is that it doesn't get red tagged before we have another building, because it came really close in 2019, and it was, I think, maybe yellow tagged, and we were able to get it functional and reopened again.
So are we looking at one-stop shopping with fire department, sheriff?
Ideally, and that's why we're having this meeting to kind of have a preliminary conversation of could we come up with a facility that could meet everyone's needs? Is that possible? If so, then let's bring sort of community participation on board and have conversations about having the Veterans Hall be part of that. We want to start with the first responders to see what their space needs are, and then to look at the available real estate we have. Right, so now we have the B of A lot. There is, I believe on that block, just one other property which is owned by West County Health Centers, which, would be open to selling if there is sort of a bigger vision that would provide increased services to the community. That's not official, that's just sort of casual conversations that I've had. We also own the lot that has the library. Obviously, we need to rebuild the library. If we did anything there, we need to take away the library. And then we do have the lot that currently is occupied by the vet building. Anything that we build, either at the B of A or the vet building, will need to be raised. But we could follow the sort of West Health Centers model of having parking underneath and a raised building. With downtown Kernville, that's going to be tricky because we're going to want to really have a design that still interfaces with the community. Like, you don't want to have a monolithic giant building, that feels separate from the streets. But there are creative architects, and I'm sure we could figure that out.
Is there a plan to continue multi-use, not just public safety, but also kindergarten and emergency shelter things?
That is absolutely on the wish list. And I think that, if we can get kind of preliminary agreement from the different government agencies, the goal will be then to come to the community and say, and what is the wish list? Which to me is, we need a big community meeting space. Like, I'd love to see Sisters Bingo come back into Kernville. But we also probably need smaller community meeting spaces. And wouldn't it be great if they were actually equipped with tech, right, that made it easy to come in and plug in and create a virtual meeting? Wouldn't it be great to have neighborhood services so that someone could come in and you have sort of like a county employee who's sort of a concierge and can connect you to permits NOMA or health and human services or whatever your need is through sort of a virtual connection? And would it be great to also have like a microgrid and have it be powered by solar, battery backup? I mean, there's a whole wish list of stuff that I would like. I would love to see Peter Gym. I would love to see Sisters Bingo, and I would love to see separate space, for emergency shelter needs, because it's great that we don't have the 35 current residents of the Kernville Vets building on the streets of Kernville. We don't want to go back to that. And we're actually just fighting for funding for that earlier today because Assistant City Manager from Warner Park is trying to cut it. But at the same time, I recognize that use of that building has taken away other really positive things in the community that I would like to be able to recreate and bring back. So we don't have enough space right now, and we need more. So. And I'm really grateful that you suggested, having events call ad hoc. So we would look forward to engaging. Thank you.
Is that all right? Moving on to Member Rova. No comments. Member Carrera.
So considering the health and safety of our safety officers currently housed in the vets building, has there been any discussion of temporarily repurposing the B of A building as a substation for them while we move through the process of repurposing the vets building site?
We actually did have that conversation. That's such a great question. So Eddie and Johannes and I actually walked through the B of A building and confirmed that it could potentially serve that need if it gets to that point, but they do believe that the current space could be repaired for now, and that would be sort of a backup. And right now, we're actually looking at potentially taking some office space in there to be able to actually have more walk-in hours, for our office. And then human services is also interested in expanding offerings there as well. So, but we do have that space could potentially serve the need of the sheriff's substation.
And then we did just bring the health center online. So there are some of those smaller spaces in the community out front. So just so we do have those spaces that are already beginning to pop up, so we don't have to do everything with that's all.
That's a really good point.
Thank you. Member Nevinson.
Do we have any updates on when the crosswalks and sidewalks are going to start in Forestville? I know it's been a month since the town hall.
Waiting for permitting from the conference. We haven't gotten this.
Caltrans. We have lots of Caltrans problems right now. So we can circle back and check in on that, but no update at this time. One other thing that I wanted to mention that I don't think we've had a conversation about at the MAC is that we've been having some preliminary conversations about the use of the park and ride lots which if we could bring a more active use to the park and ride lot in downtown Burnsville, it could potentially dispense some, sort of, I guess, replace some of the unfortunate uses that we have, seen where we have had homeless encampments as well as drug dealing occurring in that lot. And what I learned from Burt Whitaker Regional Park is that the more you bring an active use to a space, the less you see the undesirable uses of the space. And so we've been looking into EV charging opportunities as well as the potential creation of a dog park in kind of the open space right behind the lot. So would it be great to have folks, be able to come out and let their dogs run around. And so unfortunately, there was sort of some miscommunications between SoCo High, public infrastructure, and the open space district. And so we missed the most recent round of the matching grant program. But we were hoping to have some kind of submission for the next round of matching grant program and continue to work with the community on, bringing more recreational amenities to Burnsville. That's one of the things that we really heard from the Spanish language town hall that we held was kids need some place to go, and especially with the closure of El Molino, like providing more recreational family opportunities in Burnsville is a priority. So just wanted to flag that, and that might be something that I don't know if we want to kind of create an ad hoc, or if we want to work with sort of Burnsville MAC reps or who we would want to work with. But I would love to talk about what can we do to come together and touch base with the Chamber of Commerce and maybe the school, the parents, to talk about how can we bring some more amenities. And also we did provide funding yet, or are we looking to provide funding to the awesome gym program that's been working now that they're officially looking to, because I think just recently got their 501c3 status, right? So the gym program has been providing cool resources for kids to go and play basketball and have fun. So we want to see more of that. We want to support that, and would love to work with the MAC as appropriate on those kinds of things.
Great, thank you. Member Thayer.
Yes, I don't know much about construction bids, and I'm getting a lot of questions from folks in Monterey and Hill Grand about Moscow Road. So could you clarify, when you say bids are out, bids will come in, is it specified that construction has to start by X date? Or will each bidder be saying when they will start? Same thing as for completion. And in your selection process, will you take that into account? And then finally, are you still expecting that the road will be repaired this year, and if so, by when?
Those are great questions. I don't know, Lisa, if you have any additional information, but I mean, we actually sort of stayed out of the bid award process because we don't want it to be politicized. So those would be questions that we would need to refer to Janice, and I don't know if you've had conversations with her about that or have any more detail that I can, but I'm happy to follow up with those specific questions.
I would really appreciate that, and so would about 100 other people, because we've been asking this since March, and nobody has any idea when actual construction will start.
We don't have any idea when actual construction will start, because one of the things we've been saying from the very beginning has been that it's critical of the site dry out. We can't start construction until the site dries out. And as you noticed, spring has been quite wet. So we have two things going on. We have getting the construction people coming in, and we also have getting the site drying out for. Within the bids, they will be giving us their estimates of time and money and cost. That's what we ask for within different proposal bids. So that information will be there. And all those elements are taken in consideration. So there won't be a date until after all the bids are considered and we've chosen something. So there hasn't been news because we don't have news yet. As soon as there is news, we will get it out. I talked to Janice this morning, and she assured me that we were still on track for fixing, getting construction done this year. So nothing is out of place, nothing is unusual or different from the plans that we have put forth in multiple community meetings and as expected.
Thank you.
I do have a bit of good news, is I was working there the other day and they are doing repair on the bottom.
Yeah, we have one passed. I'm sorry, on board member or council member comment. So if I could defer that perhaps a little bit later, but we need to hear from member Cook Stakes on her comments.
Do I have time for 3 questions?
What questions?
Good questions. Okay, in the case of Forestville Park and Ride, I know I'm always on the case for that, one getting cleaned up. And a path that goes from Forestville Park and Ride to Steelhead Beach. What's the possibility of that happening anytime soon? Maybe even something temporary this summer, as you seek to have something more permanent in the future. There are 2 property owners, Burke's Canoes and Monty Bernard, who both agreed that they would be willing to have the path go along the edge of their property. And there's only one small piece of property that I don't know who the property owner is, but they have agreed to that it's a very dangerous intersection, a very dangerous situation with people walking on River Road to get to Steelhead Beach with their children, their coolers, and any number of things could happen because it gets crazy. Is that in the plans anytime soon?
So if there were going to be a formal sort of trail with formal trail easement, that would require all of our attorneys to work on that process. And so it would be not something that's going to happen by this summer. I think that probably the best thing to do would be if those property owners are willing to do that, to just do it informally, essentially. And then if they are, willing and is working, to then connect with regional parks and see what we can do. But I'd be happy to, if they are willing, put them directly in touch with Steve Barrett and get those conversations going.
Okay, good question. That's question number 1.
And then the bigger one, right, when we talk about that intersection crossing, and whether there's a roundabout there, that's obviously going to be a multi-year, many millions of dollars thing. So.
And can that park and ride be cleaned up before the summer, before Memorial Day?
Absolutely. Yeah, we can, at least you know that we can reach out to Circle Guy and ask them to do that.
Okay, and then 2 other things. The hiding place shelter, what's the update on that?
Georgia's Highway.
Georgia's Highway, yeah.
Yes, so we actually sort of held all hands on deck meeting with the CDC and Burbank and West County Community Services and LAFCO and everybody, no matter who was there, but it was like a 20-person Zoom screen. We are going to need to request an extension from the state of California because of the complexity of the project, right? We have to go, we had to, go forward with the LAFCO annexation process. We got the sphere of influence adjustment that we do some of it before with the annexation into the sewer districts for service. And then there's infrastructure upgrades that are needed to provide and extend that sewer service. And then the development process itself is also going to be very complex. So we are looking at next year, probably mid to late next year as the goal for the conclusion of the project. And we are in the process of getting kind of an extension waiver from the state because we are, doing this as fast as we can, but there are just all of the process bureaucratic things that need to happen really around LAFCO that is extending the timeline. Plus, it's just a whole bunch of different agencies that are involved, so it's challenging. And the good news is we are working with Brian and Stephanie from Praxis, who live in Monterey, and they are, the kind of folks who are working on the site design and layout. And so it's about local knowledge and familiarity with, county permitting processes too. We also, of course, have to get permits from ourselves, CDC, right? Getting the permit from Sonoma, but it's a whole bunch of different agencies.
So it's in process.
It's in process. Moving forward, we are continuing to sort of encourage everyone to talk together and meet on a regular basis about it.
Cool. Then my third question is the 2 Monterey bridges. The one that went out this winter. I took the lead for the first time getting here today. It was actually not bad. And then the other one, that Monterey, the main Monterey bridge, has been in the works for being rebuilt for years. What's the status on those 2 bridges?
Great question. So the first one, the little Monterey Bridge, is currently closed, and we are working on installing traffic signals to be able to have one-way, access. And there were, you sure right about a minute ago, there were too many close calls and fights that were breaking out, because people couldn't just go one way. And I understand that you get used to doing a certain way. Sometimes people just accidentally doing it, not even on purpose, right? Because they were on autopilot. So that will unfortunately likely be kind of a multi-year process, being sort of a FEMA project. I have, however, asked for consideration of expedited funding the way that we did with Moscow, but because it's not like hard closure, because there is a, another way around that only takes like really an extra 30 seconds. It is not considered quite as urgent an ingress. I'm still continuing to advocate with the CAO and Superintendent Public Infrastructure on that. With respect to the main Monterey Bridge, we are having actually some challenges right now with Caltrans, and that is also on our Caltrans list and actually top priority on the Caltrans list. So I actually have been texting Senator McGuire today about that, as well as Suzanne Smith with SCTA and RCPA, who has a close relationship with the CTC, which is the California Transportation Commission, and they kind of oversee transportation money. That's where the funding for the bridge came from. So Suzanne's looking into it. Elise is working with Carrie Lindecker. The Board of Supervisors approved the EIR, the Environmental Impact Review, last year, and so we're really pretty much shovel ready, but we're having some roadblocks with Caltrans at this point in time. So we're trying to bust through those, and the senator's on it, so I'm going to just cross my fingers and see what happens. Thank you.
All right. Now it's back to me, and I just had a little follow-up on EV charging since you brought it up, Supervisor. Northwood is installing 6 chargers right now, and construction is underway. So hopefully by midsummer, they will be operative, and that will be really helpful. If you park in that parking lot as I do on a regular basis, you see more and more EVs there. So it's a great location for vehicle charging. Well, we've got 2 on your recommendation or suggestion that we consider an ad hoc. I'm going to defer that to Chair Pitt for his consideration on the agenda committee for the next meeting.
I think it's better than informed.
Okay. Okay.
For recreation or for
Oh, this is on the park and ride.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, so we have the ad hoc for that's held in this week different hands.
And lastly, my other comment is on George's Hideaway. I drive by it on a regular basis, and they've installed. If we could have some sort of a semi-beautification project, the concertina wire is not very inviting, and it doesn't look good from a scenic highway standpoint. We need to dress it up just a little bit if we can. And that kind of concludes my comments. Thank you.
I will pass on that request. One of the things I wanted to mention is that if there is consideration at a future meeting of forming an ad hoc to look at the sort of downtown Burnville recreation improvements, it might be worth actually taking sort of a lower Russian River wide approach. We've been working with Jackie on the Forestville skate spot. She's been endlessly patient and amazing. But one of the things I constantly am talking to Ag and Open Space and Regional Parks about is we need support for these small recreational projects in unincorporated Sonoma County, because we don't really have anyone to go to, like a city manager to say, hey, we need this here. And so if that's something that the MAC wants to take on, I would love to facilitate meetings with regional parks and Ag and Open Space, and maybe you could look more broadly at what are the unmet needs, throughout the lower Russian River, not just downtown Burnville, but Forestville, Monterey, Pasadena, and it's telling, I think, that here we are across right from the park in Pasadena, and just all of it's pieced together by community services district for nonprofit organizations in West County, and there's got to be more resources, county resources that we can bring to bear.
Thank you for the generous amount of time you spent with us this evening. We made a lot of progress and had a lot of questions answered. Thank you, Supervisor. Next item on the agenda is presentation from the Independent Office of Law Enforcement Oversight, LRRMAC. And the goal of LRRMAC is to strengthen the relationship between, oops, I missed public comment, didn't I? I'm so sorry. Open the conversation for public comment, please. Leo.
All right, at this time, I would like to invite any members of the public who are attending online to raise their hand. I'll also check my inbox at this time for any written comments. Okay, I think we are all set to move on. There's no hands raised. Thank you.
Thank you. Restating my comment, the goal of ILRO is to strengthen the relationship between the community and the Sheriff's Office. Community Engagement Manager Liza Camacho, who will be joined by the 5th District Committee Advisory Council members Nancy Pemberton and Maxwell Pearl. Come forward with your presentation, please.
Podium. And then you can share screen and your slides. And anybody in the audience, because the slide might be hard to see, there are printouts of the slides at the front table.
Can you see my screen? Perfect. So we are the Independent Office of Law Enforcement Review of Reach. Here's our address. We're in Santa Rosa, across from Kaiser, number 11 Centennial. You can see on the screen there, your phone number is there. Our website is on there as well. I think Mr. Nichols read the mission and our some of our functions. We take complaints from the community. Anyone that wants to have a complaint against the sheriff deputy or a county jail. Okay. We also do policy recommendations and community engagement as well. Here on the slide, you can read what ILR does not do, what is not authorized to do. There's more. We don't change decisions for the sheriff. We only do policy recommendations. We also have the Community Advisory Council. There are two of our members for District 5, and I'll tell you a little bit about what they do.
Yeah, so yeah, the Community Advisory Council is made of volunteers, some of which are members, but which are at large. And our goal is to interface with ILR or work with ILR in terms of making recommendations about policy, reviewing what happens, take information from the community, questions from the community, concerns from the community, and do that interface. We also have some specific policy recommendations that we're working on this year, which include traffic stops, in the hiring best practices, that's issues again, getting more folks into the sheriff's office. Big issue is mental health and first responders, getting alternatives to having a sheriff be the first responder for mental health emergencies, and then also de-escalation, making sure that situations don't get out of hand. So yeah, and so we also do community outreach, and so we're trying to go to as many events as we can, hopefully it's fun, like this one and others, to take information from the community. We want to know what their concerns are, and what you would like us to work on. So, yeah.
I just want to clarify what ILRRMAC does do. We talked about what they don't do. So ILRRMAC is an auditing agency essentially. We receive complaints from either through the sheriff's department or through complaints can come directly to us. All complaints will go to the sheriff's office first, with one exception, or with a couple of exceptions. And then the sheriff's internal affairs department will conduct an investigation of the alleged misconduct. They come up with a report and a recommendation. Was there a violation of policy there? It then comes back to ILRRMAC, and we audit those, the staff, not the Community Advisory Council, but the staff audit those internal affairs investigations. And we publish an annual report in which all of those audits are discussed. But you don't get a whole lot of detail because of the privacy rights of the complainants, the witnesses, and the deputies.
there are some exceptions to that, and we now have on our website a place where you can go and look at use of force, our audits of use of force complaints. And there are two up there right now, one from a incident in Sonoma Valley, and one from an incident in Great Ridge. We also, the auditors will also make training recommendations for the deputies. They will make disciplinary recommendations, although we can't impose particular discipline. We can suggest that kind of discipline be imposed. One of the audits is public now, the one in Sonoma Valley. The incident occurred back in, I think, 2021. So, and we had backlog, so it's coming late. But that deputy was disciplined but not fired. And our recommendation was that deputy should have been fired because of the outrageousness of the misconduct. What we want to do with the hope of is that through increased transparency about what is going on, through a good access to the complaint process, that people build trust and trust that we can expose why there isn't trust and find ways to increase that trust, because public safety only works if we all trust our law enforcement. And right now, we've seen where that trust has broken down. There are numerous communities in Sonoma County that do not feel comfortable with their law enforcement. And we are only focused on the sheriff, but there are efforts to do this, develop something like, for some of the local agencies as well. Santa Rosa has is looking into it, Petaluma, Park. So that's it.
I wanted to add that the annual report, you can find it on our website. It's on there for you to view. It's at www.sonomacounty.ca.gov/IOLERO. I also wanted to mention if any of you or any community members have suggestions on events that you're having, to let us know by emailing us so that I can come out with my table and information brochures to share with the community.
Good. Thank you very much for the presentation. Again, committee member comments and questions. We're going to have one round of comments and questions, then I'll ask for public comment on the item. So I'm going to open it up with my question this time. One of the priority areas are traffic stops. Can you define traffic stops? Because I'm under the impression in rural areas, CHP has jurisdiction for traffic stops and not the sheriff's department. So I'm a little bit confused how that would affect non-incorporated areas here in the county.
So there's two things. One is that the sheriff's department has with the town of Sonoma and the town of Windsor.
Yes.
So they are responsible.
Very good.
The other is that beyond traffic stops, there are other kinds of interactions with people. We sort of use traffic stops as a catch-all, but we're talking about all kinds of interactions with individuals between the deputies and you know, coming up on the homeless people who are who feel harassed by the sheriff's deputies, for example, or those kinds of things.
Thank you. That answers my question.
Okay.
I'll pass it on now to Member Teeter. Questions, comments?
Nothing.
Member Van Dyke.
Yeah. Just briefly, having read about your about your backlog.
It's over.
Okay.
It's been completed. It actually, the backlog itself was completed before our ED was brought on board. And the last annual report that was published for 21-22 includes all of that. So we're done, we're moving forward.
Excellent, thank you.
Member Robout?
Yeah, a couple of questions. On that annual report, how many incidents were reported last year?
Good question. I'm gonna say.
Trending the same?
Probably not because that included the backlog from prior years, so you know, you probably looking in the area about 10, 15
How would you characterize your relationship with the sheriff?
for this year.
Yes, with the sheriff. I'm asking because of the last.
Say we are, I certainly haven't speak for the whole committee, but I am perfectly optimistic. He has, we are meeting with him, he has agreed to meet with Max and me and the executive director a week from Friday to discuss a policy recommendation on extremism, auditing, or not auditing, but being taking proactive measures to root out any extremism in the deputies, among the deputies. He came to our retreat. We had a Saturday full day retreat, and he came and he spoke to us, and he sat in the audience and listened to us. And so I am, and he and Johnson, the executive director, seem to have a good working relationship that's reflected at their present. They actually had a sort of joint presentation of the look at the report that was provided. So,
Yeah, I would agree. He also agreed to respond to the CAC's policy recommendations.
When you talked about advising about training, was that specific incident specific, or was that training for the department in general that was providing advice?
it might be specific that, you know, this officer, you know, there was this complaint about the officer, these violations of the policy. And because of those violations, we think that the officer needs to be trained in that way.
Would you provide advice on general training?
Yes, and it would be more of a body that would make those kinds of recommendations. Because we end up doing the more general recommendations rather than. But there's nothing that prohibits Ireland doing this stuff.
Thank you very much.
Member Pereira?
Is your community calendar public, or calendar trying to be?
We don't, however, we do post on our social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram, our events.
I have a suggestion if you put out.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Good idea. Thank you.
Member Nevinson?
Thank you for the presentation. I'm looking forward to looking at your website. I really appreciated it. Thanks for coming.
Member Thayer?
Just a couple of questions. How large is the CAC? You have current vacancies, and who is it you want to join? How are you recruiting, and who would you like to see be joining?
Well, we have 9 now, but we have 2 now. We do vacancies. We'll have another vacancy actually, I'm stepping off in September after the election. And I think we really want representation of who's in the community. So we want to broaden the representation as we can. And again, there's some that are district that are happy to. One, it was just that one. But yeah, I mean, I think people are interested.
And you said something's been appointed, who appoints to this?
So that largest appointed by the direct, and then we were appointed by supervisors.
It's a total of 11 appointments, 2 per district and 1 by the director.
Thank you.
Member Pittsix?
Does that mean that since these are appointed people, that this letter, the AB 817, applies to your meetings? Okay,
I believe it would.
okay, cool. I love the whole ILR concept, and I think that oversight is really important. It makes people pay attention to a higher level. So the fact that you even exist is huge. There is a lot of confusion between who you call sheriff or CHP on so many things. Sheriff handles crime, CHP handles traffic, but those two interact a lot. Do you get calls on some of those interactions that went awry, or do the separation of those two kind of tasks function well?
I think we get confused more with the center of the PD, that CHP. People think that we do oversight for center of the PD, and we just have to be clear, we only do sheriff.
Okay, yeah. And then what would you say the topic that is most comes up for complaints?
Excessive use of force.
And so do you encourage training on, again, mental health or just human?
Well, I think one of our, de-escalation, one of the things we're gonna do this year is figuring out policy recommendations to work on de-escalation, which would involve training.
And does that mean that when people apply to become a sheriff, that they are asked questions about how they handle in a relationship with people who are potentially committing crimes or in the middle of committing crimes, that kind of thing?
They get pretty extensive training. There's a set of California guidelines that set to for the basic minimum of training. And then we as a county can actually make them do more if they go on that. You know, it's sort of, you can add more. And that might be one of the recommendations if people want to go beyond what the state of California.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering if when someone's applying for the job, if it's possible to test them for empathy and compassion.
I think they do have a psychological evaluation, so there is it's actually quite an extensive process to become either a deputy or a detention corrections officer. And in fact, it is for to become a dispatcher as well. They have a very involved process. We were just we had the HR department come and speak to the CLC at our meeting, and hopefully we're going to get somebody from the sheriff department to come and talk, because the HR does a certain amount of application process, recruitment and application, and then at some point they turn it over after somebody survived HR, they get turned over to the sheriff, and they have a continued process, including very extensive background checks.
So do you feel that ILR has a positive impact so far?
I think yes, and I think with the passage of Measure P, which really, I can remember 2020 really strengthened ILR. I mean, one of the reasons they had this terrible backlog was that we didn't have enough money. And the one thing that Measure P did right away was to guarantee minimum budget, and we're now going to be fully staffed very shortly, and that will allow us to keep up, and it will allow us to provide more robust oversight.
Well, I really appreciate your efforts on our behalf.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, very much so.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Moving on to public comment. Leo, do we have a comment on this?
I will make a book of it, I might. I just wanted to, Kirsty, thank you so much, to Max and Nancy for your service. And I'm totally biased, obviously, but I really think we have some of the most thoughtful and active representatives on the ILRO CAC. And so I just wanted to express my gratitude, because I know that it is untold, time and hours that you have invested, and also really challenging work that you have thrown yourself into with thought and compassion. So thank you so much for your service, and really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, very much so.
Any other public comment from the audience here? Yes.
Yeah, so first off, full disclosure, I think one person family stuff, yeah, I think.
Sorry, could you start over?
Pardon me?
Yeah, there was a vehicle. Could you start over? Could you start over?
Oh, okay, yeah, sorry. Well, first it was full disclosure, I have law enforcement in my family, so I do have a bias. And I think what I hear is they appreciate what you do, because any good cop doesn't want a bad cop. So I think you'll find appreciation within the department if you haven't already heard it. And I will say I do also. I did have a couple of questions. One is you said one of the comments was you take community concerns. Is it just about officer behavior, or is it more broadly, hey, what should the department doing that it isn't doing, bringing those needs to the sheriff,
I think it's the second. I think there was because they put, you know, the staff of the, not me that, but the auditors, the lawyers and the investigators focus on the cause of these individual complaints against particular deputies or what deputies, the sheriff and stuff. But the community advisory council, our role is to do the bigger thing that you're talking about, and that is to look at, you know, one of the things that I want to look at in this year, is to get some idea of what do people, you know, when people think about public safety, what does that entail? What does that encompass? Because I think too often we have a very narrow focus. We want to address the bad guys. But public safety means much more than that. And, you know, so I think you're right. We need to be looking more broadly.
And I know I keep hearing that chiefs, the sheriff, you know, the deputies aren't enforcing the law. And, you know, I think there needs to be a better mechanism to go back to the sheriff to say, hey, we need some attention. And we're not doing like together.
You know, one of the things.
Pardon me, could you speak up just a little bit, because I think it's difficult.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
One of the concerns is that laws aren't getting enforced and that the find a way to give that information to the sheriff. And another thing I want to say is they are incredibly understaffed. The detention facilities operating. It's something like 60% of the staff and people in the detention facility consequently are being kept in their cells. They're not allowed out. Their time out of their cells is very short. The deputies themselves in the sheriff in the corrections office department have 8 hours. Over time, that needs to be so like
safety is we focused on is mental health responders, and I think if research can be brought to bear to take some of the burden off of the sheriffs on mental health interventions, that frees up their time to deal with stuff that's.
I can tell you from what I know, the deputies would appreciate that. I think
Yes.
we take it away from them, so they figure they really came in for the first place. So the second question is, I didn't be clear on how do we communicate with you?
Could you face the?
Pardon me? I said the question, my second question that I left unclear on is how does the public communicate with them to bring forth the here's what we're seeing is issues and concerns.
You can attend the meeting in person remotely. And you can also email.
Email, you can come to our office. Anyone.
Thank you.
we meet right now, we're currently meeting on the first Monday of every month, but that's about to change. And so we're going to be looking at that at our June 5th meeting. And we don't get what day we're going to be, but we do have the hot sale hybrid system. You guys are using.
Thank you. Very good. Any further questions within the audience? Seeing none, Leo, any questions or comments? From those that are remote?
Yes, so you entered 3 questions into the Q&A and you also have your hand raised. So rather than me reading your questions, I'm gonna go ahead and just allow you to talk and you can state for 2 minutes your concerns. B, you should be able to speak at this time. Or it's it's 3 minutes, right? Is that right, Chair?
That's correct.
Okay, so B, you have 3 minutes, and then I'll put the clock on the screen for the final minute.
Hi, 3 minutes really isn't enough time to go over the last 6 years. I got literally tortured, and they had a torture ring in the jail. It was called the Yard Counseling case in 2015. They didn't change the policies until 2018. I got almost killed by a deadly force carotid hold, been banned. Numerous people have died from this technique. I told the county supervisors, dangerous lethal technique. I reported it to ILRO. They covered it up. The sheriff's office, and there's documents of this. I have the written statements from the deputy witnesses who say that I was not resisting, the recorded interviews with the 2 deputies who assaulted me, who admit to using the carotid hold, the expert witness who was a master level at a police academy, stating that it was unlawful to use the carotid hold unless somebody's being assaultive. And even the 2 deputies who assaulted me didn't accuse me of doing anything assaultive. So I waited for 4 years for ILRO to participate in the cover-up of what happened. Internal Affairs lied about what happened right under a camera. They lied about the camera's ability to record. They destroyed the equipment, the records of the camera. And I have the documents because I filed a lawsuit. I got a court-sponsored discovery request for the camera records, and then they changed their story and say, oh, well, the camera, and a declaration from the camera room staff. And it's just impossible for me to relate everything in 3 minutes. But I have the documents, and I've asked the county for a meeting. I'm trying to resolve this and move on with my life. And ILRO ignores me, the county ignores me, and I'm going to have to file another lawsuit. And the county has already spent $5 million on legal expenses, on defending, basically denying me my basic human rights to not just to due process, but to not be tortured and nearly killed for no reason under camera. I was not charged with a crime. There was no probable cause. I was being retaliated against for invoking my Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. And I've asked for a meeting, and it's inappropriate for Andrew Cash is the official liaison, and he's the Internal Affairs and who lied and destroyed evidence. So, ILRO has a budget of over $1 million a year. They do one review per 4 months. So I waited 4 years, and then they just, they participated in covering it up. The justification was that, whatever, I'm out of time.
Thank you very much for your comment.
No.
Do we have any comments? Leo,
I don't see any other hands raised.
Does Josh have his hand raised? Leah?
No.
No.
Josh? No, the only hand raised is B. B, you can always feel free to contact our office again. You can email at 5 DISTRICT, the number 5 at sonoma-county.org, or you can email me as well, and we can see if there's anything we can do. If you are already in legal proceedings, often if county counsel's involved, there's not any role for our office, but I just wanted to provide you at least our contact information should you wish to follow up.
Thank you. Moving on to the next agenda item, this is fire season readiness, defensible space resources. It's my pleasure to receive a presentation from Sonoma County Fire District Division Chief Fire Marshal Cindy Foreman regarding actions residents can take to create a dispensable space and harden their homes in advance of fire season. The resource sheet outlining programs available to support these efforts was developed by Safer West County. Josh Leone, the director from Sable Chief. Good to see you here in Casadero again.
Thank you. How are you?
Fine, thanks.
Thank you, Council, for having me here. I really appreciate it. Good evening, Supervisor Hopkins, Elise, and hey, Leo, how's it going? Happy to be here, and it's kind of a last minute thing, so I'm glad we were able to kind of come here and maybe share the little information will help everybody. We're heading towards summer, and of course, that's all a nervous time for us here in Sonoma County. So I want to talk about how we take our power back a little bit. This is some opportunities that are out here within the county to give folks a little bit of financial respite from some of these things that we're recommending you get out there and do to harden your homes and create defensible space and be ready for the next one, right? Because we don't say if anymore, we just say when, and I hate that. I used to say if, I used to say when about earthquakes, because I come from earthquake country, but and now I live in earthquake country, but we're also saying when with fires now, not if anymore. So it's just our new norm. It's not my favorite norm, but it's our new norm. So I'll just, how long do I have really, by the way?
Yeah, that's the time you need.
Well, that's really it, all right. I could stand here all night and talk to you guys. So at least you're gonna have to cut me off. So first of all, let's just kind of talk about, I think probably most people have an idea what we mean when we talk about defensible space, but let's be a little bit more clear about that. So we live in the SRA, state responsibility area. Almost everybody's in the SRA out. What does that mean to you? So state responsibility means essentially that you live in the watershed, that you live in the forest. And our state agency, which is CAL FIRE, who's our great partner, they are responsible for suppressing fires that are in the state responsibility area. So that vegetation fire starts across the street right now. Casadero Fire Department is going to be the first one there because this is their jurisdiction. However, if that fire gets big or if there's an investigation that's needed for that fire, CAL FIRE is responsible. They're responsible for the origin cause of that fire, and they're responsible for the financial cost to put that fire out. Doesn't mean that we're not all there because we are. It's our profit. It's our profit. But CAL FIRE has that job of managing the forest and the watershed. So there are multiple laws that apply to us for defensible space. The first one is the Public Resource Code 4291, and that sort of talks about that 100-foot defensible space law, right? And 100 foot or to the property line, which we could say, and if it's on their property, they still got to fix it, but we struggle with it. So CAL FIRE's out in force doing those inspections annually, making sure that people are clearing that defensible space and getting ready. We're also doing that. We also have ordinances here in Sonoma County that have been built to help with some of the pitfalls that we have in some of our public resource codes. So a great example, and we have a lot of that in this area. Great example is that the public resource code with that 100-foot defensible space law does not apply to unimproved properties. So that means if you don't have a structure on your property or your neighbor does not have a structure in their property, there used to be no requirements in Sonoma County to be clear, regardless of if there's a restaurant next to it. So what Sonoma County did and our Permit Sonoma group did is they built the 13A ordinance. The 13A ordinance is essentially a vegetation management ordinance, very similar to the Public Resource Code. However, it fills that stopgap of unimproved parcels shall do the following. They're not exempt from vegetation management. So that sort of fills the stopgap. And the county has also built a fairly robust vegetation management inspection program under 13A. They work with fire districts and they give us funding to go out and do these inspections. The county also says to us, if you have trouble with properties that are not complying, we have funds set aside for force abatement. Now, in a perfect world, we could use that force abatement funds to abate anybody who doesn't clear their weeds. However, there's a limited number in that budget for force abatement. So it's on a case-by-case basis. So I encourage you wherever you live here on the river. Some of you may live in my district, some of you may be in Casadero or Monterey. However, that 13A ordinance applies across the county. So if you're struggling with vegetation management or complaints you have about your neighbors or your neighbors, if you're in my fire district, you can go onto our website and you can file that complaint. It goes right to my administrative assistant, and she, in that moment, schedules an inspector to go out and inspect the property. So we're very quick turnaround on that. Some of the other smaller fire districts and or volunteer fire companies have the county sometimes designated to go out and do those complaint inspections for them, or some of them are doing them themselves. So if you have a complaint about a neighbor, if you have a complaint or a concern about a property,
figure out which fire district you're in, and then reach out to them first. And they may send you to the county if you're not in a fire district that runs their own program. The county was very on top of it. They have lots of inspectors also. So I have a lot of faith in that program. The Fire Marshal Shershak has done an amazing job with his staff in getting that program stood up and functioning out there. They continue to get funding for that program. So in the near future, unless Supervisor Hopkins looks at me differently, there will continue to be funds to help with, or she throws something at me, but there will continue to be funds to provide services for that program. Another thing that just happened, was it yesterday? See what I was thinking? Yesterday. 2 days ago. 2 days ago. It's all a blur.
Right.
It's all a blur. The CWPP, which is called the California Wildfire Protection Plan, has been being built. We had one that was done in 2016 before the Tubbs fire. It needed some work, and the Tubbs fire kind of woke us all up to a lot of things. So that document has been revamped, rebuilt, and it is stellar right now. And what does that mean to you? What does the California Wildfire Protection Plan mean to me? As a property owner, as a 501c3, as a homeowners association, as any of those things, if you want to do projects to create defensible space, shaded fuel breaks, ridge top fuel breaks, whatever that may be, you can now apply for funding for help with those programs. Because one of the things, whenever you apply for a grant, they want to know you've got to identify the problem and you've got to identify solutions. Well, that's sort of difficult for the layperson, but that CWPP document is a matrix for all the things that are wrong and all of the remedies we can do to fix them. So it's very comprehensive. You can go on to Permit Sonoma's website and look at the CWPP. It was a pretty cool experience to go before the Board of Supervisors, and they almost had nothing to say because they were so pleased with how that document was processed. And we all, as fire agencies, ag and open space, regional parks, all of us had a seat at the table in building this, and all of us have had a voice. So this document, including the Board of Supervisors, so this document speaks from all of us on what are the identifiable problems in the community and what can we do to fix it. So it's a really important document when you go to apply for grants, because grants are very particular. They don't just want you willy-nilly deciding what you think is best. They want empirical data to back that up, and then they're going to go, well, maybe we should give them money. So it's a great tool for all of us in the community. There are some smaller communities that have done their own CWPPs, but I'll be honest with you, if you want to, it's great, it's not necessary. This document is very comprehensive, and it will cover this county very well for groups, agencies, 501cs that want to go out and seek funding. This is your guiding document. So thank you very much again to the Board of Supervisors for almost just taking that and running with it. So they have a lot of faith in the process, and we couldn't have gotten through it without their support. What does defensible space mean? That means removing the vegetation from your home and from your stuff. We have sheds, we have pump houses, things like that. We're removing that vegetation up to 100 feet. However, what we're finding, one of the most important parts of that is that first 5 feet. How did we learn that? Well, how many catastrophic wildfires have we had here in Sonoma County? I think we've had 5 in my district alone. We learned that the hard way. And there's also scientific data that helped us learn that lesson. But that first 5 feet off of that structure is the most important when we look at ember cast. And ember cast, let's be honest, if you think the wall of flames burned down Sonoma County, it didn't, it was ember cast. Okay. Those embers went out miles. When I used to give my speeches about ember cast, I'd say, oh, they can go about a mile to 2 miles ahead of the fire. There was fire brands in Sebastopol. That's not a mile or two. So those embers and that debris can fly miles, particularly when we're looking at sustained winds of 90 miles an hour, right? That stuff's going to go anywhere it wants to go. So those first 5 feet in that structure are the most important. The Public Resource Code is going to adopt mandates that the first 5 feet shall be non-combustible. That's probably going to come down the pipe 2024. We'll probably see that hit a bill where that's going to be law. So it's also a super easy thing that we can all do. It's a little painful for some, But if we can create that first 5 feet with nothing but, I'm not asking you to make it ugly, I'm asking you to make it non-combustible. So we're talking about decomposed granite or pavers or concrete, you know, whatever, something that is non-combustible. And you know those beautiful rosemaries that are right outside the door because we want to go cut it and put it in our chicken? Any plant that has an oil burner is going to burn, and it's going to burn very hot. Those you do not want next to the house. Frankly, you don't want any vegetation next to the house. You might have a beautiful hydrangea that's right under a single pane window. I'm telling you right now, even though it's green and it's pretty and it's blue, it's going to burn. It will burn. So anything that's near our structure, near combustible construction, is a problem. And so we can start right now. You could go home right now and spend 10 minutes pulling stuff off your house, right? It's easy, it doesn't cost you much. But that 5 feet is critical. It's become more critical as we've gone through these fires. Another piece that we found, saw it myself in Coffee Park, of all places, right? How did Coffee Park burn? Well, let me tell you. Coffee Park burned partially because home-to-home ignition happened. And part of that home-to-home ignition was fences that connect to a house. So the house next door starts to burn, and the fence next door starts to burn, and it burns across, and it burns that next gate and right into the garage of the next house, and so on and so on. Lots of firefighters were running through those neighborhoods with chainsaws and donkey kicks, knocking down fences to try to stop that conductivity that combustible construction was doing. So suggestion, and I don't know that this will get law, this might get ordinance with us here in the county by next year, but we're going to start requiring on new construction non-combustible gates that go from the wooden fence combustible construction to combustible construction shall be non-combustible. So that's another thing to look at. Not super expensive, but a super easy, fairly affordable thing to do. You can, and there's lots of different options that you do that. Actually, I live up Reedley Road, so I'm in the Bird Scar, and what we did is I went on Wayfair. Sorry, I'm not toting Wayfair for anybody who thinks I am, but we found these beautiful metal panels, and my husband, you know, did a frame of that, and that's our gate. So we've got this beautiful wood gate, but it ain't touching the house. So the other thing that we don't recognize, and a lot of people think that it was that wall of flames that burned our houses down, but 80% of the homes fall burned from Embercast. So Embercast the enemy. So what can we do? We got through the vegetation, but what can we do to our houses to make them more hardened or ready for fire? And there's vulnerable points on our homes. One of the most vulnerable points on our home is our attic and crawl space venting. So when you go home, take a look. We have venting on our crawl spaces, and we have venting on our attics for a reason. There has to be airflow that moves through it. We're going to get mold. Things are going to dry rot out. So you have to have that air movement through your structure. However, most of you that have homes that are probably a little bit older, that have been built since 2007, homes that were built prior to 2007, likely have 1/4-inch mesh that covers your vents. Not enough. Embers will go through that in a minute, and they did all day long with a test fire. So those embers are carried by wind, and they're going to find the smallest little place they can get into. So attic and crawl space venting are critical places on the structure that we need to harden. So you can do it as simple as going down to 1/8-inch mesh. You could even take the existing 1/4-inch mesh you have, put an 1/8-inch mesh layer over it. That will do the trick. Or better yet, you could spend the money and buy a state fire marshal approved attic or crawl space vent that does not allow ember intrusion. There's several different products out there. So that's an easy fix, right? I could go down to the hardware store and buy 1/8-inch mesh and cover up my vents tomorrow, no problem. That's going to make a big difference. Okay, so I'm just giving you 2 things that are fairly cost effective that will make a huge difference in hardening your structure. If you can reduce the vegetation and you can harden your home, your house has a 75% better chance of surviving a wildfire. That's huge. There's other things we have to do. We have to look at our windows, right? Single pane windows, they cannot handle the heat of flame impingement, right? They're going to fail, and it's going to burn into the house. So if you have single pane windows, consider upgrading those to dual and or triple pane windows, because those are going to make a big difference. What kind of roofing do we have? I don't see a lot of it. If I do see it, it is out in this area, but shake shingle roofs, gotta go. In fact, if you have a shake shingle roof, you likely will struggle for insurance. Right, so I remember years ago, this was probably back in 2007 or 8. One insurance company came in Larkfield and Mark West area, and in a rural subdivision, and they started canceling policies because a lot of those still had shake shingle roofs. So there was this big boom of the roofing. All the roofing companies were so happy when that happened because they had a lot of work in the Larkfield area. So the things I'm talking about cost us money, right? It's not cheap to do vegetation management. It's backbreaking, and then getting rid of it's really expensive. So there's lots of options to that though. So burn permits are, and I know here I am about the fire department talking about fire, and I'm going to tell you, hey, get your burn permit. Burn permits and burning at the right time of year is a cost-effective way to manage the fuels that you reduce during the season. Okay, burn permits are really easy to get, and burns are a very simple thing for you to conduct. Okay, so that's an option for you up here. The other option is we have a very robust chipper program here in Sonoma County, and particularly West County now. We just got some chippers that are designated just for this area. So the county has stood up a chipper program for years now. Very successful program. It's free. You go online, you sign up. They send the chipper out, well, they give you the rules, there's rules. They give you the rules and they send the chipper out and they take care of it for you. We have chippers that just came through grants out here in West County. Forestville has a designated one. I'm gonna get this wrong, but Occidental has one. Montreal has one. Yeah. So those were all got those are grants that those chippers aren't driving out of this area and going somewhere. They are right here. They're through the fire state councils here of how you can tap those. Another great resource, cost you nothing. So the county got millions of dollars in grants and stood up a program called SoCo Adapts. SoCo Adapts has multiple footprints out here in the river. So starting in Forestville and working its way out here, there are multiple grant opportunities. You can get up to $10,700 in matching funds from this grant program to help with defensible space and help with hardening. You've got to initiate it. So I left some paperwork in the back. I don't run that program. I'm just here because Carol Leon Safford, who does run that program and writes these grants and did our CWPP, is one of my dear friends and a colleague and a hardworking gal, and she wants you guys to know about this because it's not getting used. This is a lot of money that's out there for people right now, and it's not getting tapped. So I'm here to sell you on SoCo Adapt. When you leave, grab one of the flyers from the back and go to the Permit Sonoma's website. You can click on the map and see if your community or your property falls within that grant footprint. So I really want to push that. Yep, it's in your packets. Yeah, and I think I've kind of touched on the three things here. So, Spanish side, I don't really know the side here. Yeah, so SoCo Adapts, I've talked about the 13A, the Permit Sonoma Fire Inspection Program. We're out there in force right now in my fire district. We probably do about 2,500 properties in about a 4 to 5 month period. So we're out in force. We're not, but I'll tell you this. My philosophy and my division is education over enforcement. Because I'll tell you what, we sent out letters ahead of the season of the properties that we're going to go inspect. And we got some pushback. We've got some upset people that felt that letter was kind of threatening. And while I say I don't think the letter was very threatening, I think Supervisor Hopkins probably has received a few heated people saying, how dare you tell me you're going to come inspect my property? You have no right to do this, and I plead the fifth, or whatever it is. I will tell you that we're not out there to enforce. We're not out there to find all your unpermitted things. We're not there for any of that. We just want to educate you. We want to give you a fighting chance. So I apologize if that letter felt threatening to people. It was just letting you know, hey, we're trying to come out and give you guys everything we can to get you ready for fire season. So if you share with your neighbors, we're not out there to get everybody in trouble, and we're not out there looking for a marijuana plant, and we're not out there looking for, your unpermitted hot tub, or I don't know. We don't care about any of that stuff, right? We just want to get you educated and get you moving in the right direction. So I did want to touch on that because there has been a little bit of pushback on that. I think more so when the letters went out to this area, because she's not here for a reason, right? I'm really for a reason. I kind of like my peace of mind. I kind of like being a little to myself. I don't have somebody right next door. I kind of appreciate that. So the goal isn't to invade your privacy. It's just, and we're not going to come on private property without permission. That's the other piece of this that maybe wasn't defined in the letter, but we're not coming on your private property unless there's an exigent circumstance that requires us, an emergency, something really horrific that we see. That's the only reason we legally can come onto your property without permission. And for the most part, that rarely ever happens. Oh, I shouldn't say that now. I just doomed it, didn't I? So I would really encourage you guys to see if you've been in the grant footprint, and if you do, take advantage of this program. It's free money. So I think I'm kind of getting a little bit, I don't want to take up too much of your time tonight. Any questions?
There will be. We're going to start off with the council members and go on order. They get one bite at the apple to chat with you, and we're running up against the clock as well, so we want to be conservative on time. So let's open it up with member Teeter.
Oh, Sheila.
Member Van Dyke.
Going back to defensible space and the neighbors. I live in a neighborhood where we've got very small properties and very close together. And yet behind our properties is a very large property with a house on it, and an orchard. But along the property line, along the fence line, is a lot of vegetation, a lot of trees that need to be pruned, a lot of, and actually, I admit, I cut down a bay tree.
Good on you. I can't
Except there's no killing a bay tree.
There is. I've got so many my property. It's insane.
So about 10 years ago, I cut it to the ground, but it is now 3 stories high. And so do I report that to my local jurisdiction?
Do you know who your local jurisdiction is?
Yeah, it's Brush River.
So that's me.
Oh, okay.
So you live in Girdle.
So am I allowed to cut it down? It's on the other side of the fence.
You can cut what's growing over your side
Right.
legally without even permission.
Right.
However, you can't go on someone else's property and cut it.
Right.
So that answered that. However, there are some requirements in 13A of 10 feet off property lines. That's not a huge amount, but a lot of times that will do the trick when we talk to them about that 10 foot off your property line. Or better yet, my inspector goes out, and this is what I teach them. You go out and you say, it's not required, but could you, can you please? And here's why. Look, if you could give your neighbor that little bit of buffer, it's going to make a big difference for them. And even better, it's going to make a big difference for you. Sometimes we just need to sell people on the concept, right?
And I don't want to offend my neighbor.
Oh, I totally agree with you, but let us, and here's the other piece. I don't ever send my inspector out into a neighborhood and say, just go do that property. If you go into that neighborhood, it's fair that you go and inspect all those properties. Because I'll tell you one thing that happens to us almost daily is we get a call, we go out to inspect a property. And the homeowner saying, look at that right there. Do you see my neighbor's property right there? Isn't that terrible? That tree right there is going to burn my property down. And we go, hold on, turn around for a second. There's your property. And you got some things right here that are a bigger threat than that will ever be to you. And they go, well, what do you mean that's? So we try to be really fair and judicious when we go out in neighborhoods. We try to make sure we talk to everybody. So if you have concerns, you can call my office, you can get an inspection scheduled, we'll come out to your house, we'll look at it, we'll tell you, hey, yeah, we probably should go talk to that neighbor about it, but we're also going to talk to that neighbor and that neighbor and that neighbor and that neighbor. So it feels fair. It doesn't feel like somebody's being picked out or picked on. So feel free to call, go on our website. That's the best way to do it because it goes right to my administrative assistant and she schedules the inspection. So if you just go on our website, click on the lead abatement tab, you can file that complaint. I say you can't be anonymous, and what I mean by that is I need a phone number, I need somebody to call back if I have questions, concerns, or we can't figure out what you're talking about. So, however, we don't disclose that. When we go out and do inspections, and particularly complaint-based inspections, we don't go out and say, hey, we're here because your neighbor hates you and thinks you've got a crappy property. We don't do that. We don't do that. So you do remain anonymous. The only caveat to that is if it went to court share something with you if I have a minute. But if it goes to court, we have to disclose everything, right? That's just the nature of the beast. I will tell you, there was a monumental court case that I was part of not even 2 months ago now, where a Bennett Valley neighbor sued his other neighbor because his neighbor was continually not cutting his grass. And he decided to cut his grass in July on a windy afternoon. And fortunately, Cal Fire and us got there really quick and knocked the fire down, but it scared the peanuts out of the guy who'd been complaining about that property for 2 years. He took him to court, sued him. Guess what? He won $500,000. He wasn't injured. His property wasn't damaged. It was based solely on the fact that the neighbor had continually been negligent. He won not only the $500,000, but his attorney fees, which brought it to $1 million award for the neighbor not cutting the weeds. So that's what speaks volumes to me. When that kind of stuff happens, we got to pay attention to that. So people are starting to go, I'm not going to take this anymore, just having a crumb neighbor. I'm going to take this to the next level now. So anyway, I divulged a bit. Sorry about that.
That's your question.
Yes, it does.
Very good, thank you. Member Robot?
Hi. Thanks for talking to me about the rock development a while ago. And just personally, I'd like to invite you on the Virgin Talk radio show.
I'd love to. This is a face for radio, not for television. So I'd love to.
Yes.
You have a radio voice.
Thank you.
Very good. Member Guerrero?
Looking at the wildfire map, so I'm looking, we have Burnwood Park, Old Cast, so.
This is not in the footprint. So the footprint's going to be really delineated by those blues and yellows.
Right. Why?
Because that was part of the CWPP. So some of this stuff came out of that document I talked to you about, where there were target hazards, target fuels, target topography, those kind of things. So that's sort of what that document does, is it finds those places that are in most in need, have some of those topography fuel challenges. Does that kind of answer your question a little bit? It's not to say that that won't be in the next set of grants.
Right, okay, because just literally right now, I'm organizing a fire safe organization, and I've got these, it's one unit.
Yeah.
And I've got the delineation separated. But yeah. So, I mean.
But do me a favor, get me involved in your group, because we have lots of fire state council. Oh, perfect.
You know.
Okay, good.
No, I'm just saying, like, yeah, when I'm gonna get a question on this.
Yes, you are. Your answer is that the areas were targeted again, based on topography, fuel type, access, ingress. There's lots of different factors that made that particular footprint be chosen for the grant. And that's sort of a big answer, and I apologize for that. I can get you a deeper answer to that.
The next follow-up question is, what's the process to get on the next round?
Great question. I'm gonna get back to it. Would you mind shooting me an email?
Yeah.
And I'll get you that. Okay, I'll get that question answered for you. Lickety split.
Member Davidson?
Yeah, what are the logistics for the chipper? Is that on the website?
Yes, you can. So let's start off where you live.
Forestville.
Okay.
Forestville.
So right now, the Forestville chipper, the county has graciously, because we're a pretty busy fire district, the county has graciously offered to run our chipper for us. So I'm gonna remember who my contact is with the Forestville chipper though. Police. They can go on the
Safer West County.
Okay, there you go. There you go. That's exactly what you do. Thank you. And while there are some that are doing the bookings on their own, or fire districts are doing the bookings on their own, the county's doing the bookings for us and putting that program.
Okay.
So thank you. Safer West County.
Great.
And it's under Slack.
I see that on the packet now. Yep. Thank you.
All right, Member there.
Just one clarification. I had understood that program was in progress for homeowners who need to hire somebody to come and cut down the bays and cut down all the redwood saplings and all that. that there would be some sort of reimbursement of that. Is that the SoCo Adapt, or is that a different program?
That's the SoCo Adapt, so it's a matching grant, so you're gonna be spending some of your own money, but they're gonna give you, I think that one's, I think the defense and space one is $3,700, I think, and the other one is the home hardening one is about 7,000. So, yes.
Brief follow-up to that question.
Uh,
Wondering if the combination of 13A and SoCo adapts is possible to solve property lines. Most of the neighbors have really been good about taking care of their properties, but we have one vegetation management, piles of old lumber.
Tell me you live in my fire district, please tell me you live in
Forestville.
I got you. I got you.
And we've had it inspected in the past, and they did not cross the property lines, but the two properties next to it said, why don't you come take a look over the fence?
Yes, that's very helpful.
All the photographs and.
Although we can't do this, if we can walk by your fence and see it without making an effort, then yes, we can go on your property.
It's easy.
But I'll tell you what, I work hand in hand with a pretty amazing lady in our code enforcement, and her name is Tyra Harrington. And she is amazing, and her staff is amazing. And when we see properties where there's code compliance issues, we get her involved quickly, and she is very good and very receptive. We have a great relationship with code enforcement. So we kind of look through both those eyes when we come out on a property. So if there's some junkyard conditions, that's something that code enforcement deals with all the time.
Well, in the case of the last time of the inspection, the inspectors were very compassionate for this person who is extremely low income, who has a couple of alcoholics living on the property and don't pay the rent. And so they were compassionate. The property owner did a little bit of cleanup, but it's gone back to where it was before. And they cannot afford to do this. And the property owner would lose their property if there was lien placed on it, would put them into a bad situation.
Sure.
So the compassion is really appreciated, but this particular property would turn into an inferno within seconds and impact everybody. So is there, with 13A, is there, and SoCo Adapt, is there a grant that could be applied for to take care of their property for them?
So you bring up a great question, because we deal with this, these kind of situations come up all the time, right? And so there are funds perhaps available when we identify properties that are like what you're talking about. We don't want people out on the street, but sometimes, and this sounds terrible when I say this, but take it with a grain of salt. Sometimes living under a bridge is safer than living in conditions sometimes that people are living in. And I'm not saying that it's better to be unhoused. I'm just saying that sometimes conditions are so dangerous that it's really hard. That empathy works, but if we really feel like it's really hard for someone who's a public official to walk away from a property that is truly a death trap to somebody, right?
For everybody in the neighborhood.
So, but rather than put them on the street, we would start looking for resources for them, right? So there's the SoCo Adapt grant, right? There's also, Fire Marshals and Church Act also has funds that are available when we find properties that we feel have a desperate need, and vegetation management funds and/or vegetation management personnel could make a big difference. Then we can go to him and say, can we tap some of those funds, or can we get additional funding for our program to help with indigent circumstances, right?
Okay,
so I'm not guaranteeing you, but I can tell you that I've done about 5 different properties like that, and we've worked with the property owner and we've gotten some funding. I've also gotten where United Rents donates the weed mower, and we've gone out and done it ourselves. Sometimes we've had our volunteers go up. If we see someone really in need, we'll try to circle the wagons on our own as a fire department and see if we can help those people. If not, we're going to reach to the county to see if they can help us.
So then, in order to take care of this one property, we reach you.
Yep.
And start the process.
Yep. Let's get out there. Let's get some eyes on it. Let's get our opinion. And then let's see what we can do. If we have property owners that want the help, that's the big piece.
That's the question I
That's the
have.
big
You can you force somebody into doing
You
it?
can't force somebody to get help. I wish you could, because this would be a very different world, right?
Yeah.
So we can't force them, but we have a way with people.
I actually think you could have inroads with this, and so I will definitely contact you, and I know that the person who lives right next door to them is desperate at this point.
Perfect. Let's see what we can do to help.
Okay, so.
I'm up for the challenge.
And can you part? Did it? Okay, it's up
What's that?
there.
What?
It's on that piece.
I'll leave my card. I think I got it.
Follow up and then I get to speak.
Sorry.
That's all right.
This is a hypothetical question.
Oh, I love those.
Hypothetically, if I had just last week spent, say close to $1,000 getting my yard cut down, and I've gotten estimates on my trees as well, would I be qualified to apply for the so-called?
I would keep your receipts and I would definitely consider that, because remember, these are matching grants. So it's not like they just go, okay, here's $3,700 to do your vegetation management. Let's say you get a cost in your vegetation management going to cost you $5,000, and you're able to show your match of, well, I've paid this much, or I've got a quote to do this much. And you got to read through the fine print of the grant. But I would keep those receipts, and I would continue to move forward with getting bids and things like that, so you have a good idea of what you're up against.
Okay, thank you.
Cindy, you gave me Jason Polo's.
Oh, sorry. That's my deputy fire marshal. I'm trying to. Keep it, because I just ran out. I'm sorry.
Okay.
You can still go onto our website and find the page for submitting complaints, and write down this number if you put on there. 892-2441. That's my administrative assistant. She's sort of Rome. Everything goes through her.
Okay. Thank you.
You got it.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I'd like to recognize the fact that Cazadero Chief Krausman is here in his house. He's back there. So he's our local chief and has run this department since 2002, chief, I think. 2001. I missed it by a year. Sorry about that. I did have a couple of questions. With the mapping, I live outside of the area. So
go down, Brent.
yeah, so go down. So Chief Krausman, I have to ask you, you would come and inspect my property, or do I go to CAL FIRE and have them inspect my property?
CAL FIRE will come and inspect your property this time.
CAL FIRE, thank you.
We are trying to get some of our volunteers to a training program with Carol and Stanford, and she's going to do some training, and then we're going to start trying to send some of our stipend employees out to homes to do inspection.
Very good, thank you. And let's see. Tons of notes here. We do have also Paul Berry, the president of Castro Clearances District, is here. And I understand, do we have a chipper in Cazadero now, or
We have a shipper and move truck.
I'm sorry?
We have a shipper and a move truck.
Okay, very good. And for folks in Cazadero, do they request the fire department to come out and chip, and do the remains of the chippings stay on site, or are they hauled away?
No, we have the ability to haul the chips away. However, the program that we started with was to leave the chips on site.
Right. Okay, thank you.
And you don't consider them to be a fire hazard?
If you disperse them in the right place, they should be all right. They're great erosion control. They're great for keeping the water in the soil. You just have to be judicious about where you put them, right? Not in that 5-foot zone for sure. And nice thin layers. So you can still use chips. They're still good. You just gotta be careful where you put them.
I think it's time for public comment from folks within the audience. Do we have public comment locally? Not seeing any public. Jay, did you have a comment? Nope. I'm sorry. Leo, then we can request public comment from the remote viewers.
Sure. At this time, anyone in the public who is online, please feel free to use the raise hand function if you'd like to ask a question or speak. Okay, I think that there are no hands raised, so that can conclude the public comment period.
Thank you, Leo. Moving on then to,
Thank you very much.
thank you, Cindy.
Thanks.
Chief, appreciate your coming out to Casadero and see us. Committee and staff reports. First off, the way we want to handle this, we have four committee and staff reports. So we're going to have the committee members report out, and then we will have comments and questions on each item. And then we'll go on to the next committee member. That's the best way to do it, rather than complicate the issue by trying to do it all at once at the end. So first off is Chair Rogoff from Communications and Ad Hoc report.
Thank you, Mike. We made appearances at a couple of events so far. The next one's actually tomorrow night. It's the night market on Gurnville Bridge, and Matt will be here with the table. Patty's been at a couple of events so far, as have others. So you want to tell us what you thought about our presence?
Sure. I was at the plant sale by Food for Thought last month, as well as the Fix It Fair that was hosted by the Russian River Rotary. One was sort of informal. We didn't have our table and banner and canopy and all that. It was more, we would identify and helping people out, but also identify ourselves as there on behalf of the MAC. And I gotta say, I've got, by the way, 2 hard copies of the event sign up sheet. I think this is a really, really great thing. Thank you, Betsy. It was Betsy's idea to try and encourage us to really devote time over the next few months to show up at these events. People come up. Most of the time, they don't know what it is we are, what we're doing. They appreciate we have resource materials that we hand out. They appreciate that. And if we're gonna have more people involved in these meetings, understanding what we do, and maybe even interested in serving on the MACs, we just got to show up. So I had a couple of hard copies. I think you all should have, you meaning all the reps and alternates should have received an email with a link that you can go directly to the Google Doc and sign up. We've still got lots and lots of events. There's nobody saying that they have time to show up. You know, we're not asking you to do 10 events, but if you can find a few, especially, you know, in your areas, that you can show up. And we do have, like I said, we've got the table, the canopy, the chairs. It's very comfortable. We thank you very much, best chairs you could imagine. And it's, I think it's really important work. So that's my very important view.
Thank you. Thank you. Also appeared at the town hall in Forestville, and we've got that calendar, and I'm just going to reinforce that statement that it's not just the communications committee that needs to communicate. It's all of us to inform the public about what we do and to hear from the public about what we do. So I just want to encourage you to go on that Google Docs and put your name on an event. It's fun to do. We're going to be doing a bunch of farmers markets in Gurnville this summer, and yeah, so, and we're continuing work on getting into more local media, print media in particular, and reaching communities of people who are less connected in one way or another. And that's big work yet to be done, but we're really engaged. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the reports. Member comments on the ad hoc report. Yeah. Starting off with you're on the committee. All right. Sorry about that. Nick,
can we get name tags? Because I know I attend a lot of public events that are yes.
And business cards.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a number of events that aren't even on the list where I know that.
Well, we can add them to the list. Add the events to the list.
Member Nemerson.
One more comment is that please add because you not only sign up, but if you know something in your community that's coming up, Just add it in, about good point, thank you.
We actually want to do grades as well.
Have you completed your thought?
On this one, yeah.
Yeah, okay, great, thanks, right. Okay, Member Namensa, any comments?
I worked at the Fix It Fair. It was fun. So great work putting us out there.
There, you already spoke, and Member Cook Stakes.
Yeah, the only thing I suggest is when you send out emails, please put out LRRMAC at the top. The very first thing for the subject line is when you're scanning through emails. The last one just went right by me. So thank you.
We discussed that.
Yeah, I'm very grateful for the communications committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and I am as well. So that concludes my comments. Are any comments from the audience on this item? Leo, do we have any comments from the public on the ad hoc report?
So I don't see any hands raised at this time. Is there anyone online who would like to raise your hand right now? There's no hands raised, Chair. I think you can proceed at this time.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next committee cleanup ad hoc report. Chair Namensa.
Just a quick report. I think that we're continuing to focus on the micro level cleanups, which I think will help all communities. And I like the idea that came up in the beginning about getting the high weed mowing schedule, because that can help direct our micro cleanups as well. And so that's what I have.
Okay, very good. Comments from Member Van Dyke? No comment. Member Robot? And Guerrero? Member Thayer?
No.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was something to say.
Okay.
Yeah. One of the micro cleanups are from a neighborhood perspective as well as a town perspective. So basically, the first big cleanup involved dumpsters and ecology and all kinds of recycling. It was a big involved event and required an oversight of a 501c3 to do insurance. These micro cleanups are much smaller, but our committee wants to help in those. So that's an example would be the downtown cleanup in Forestville on May 21st. That's literally just a parade route, so it's very short, it's half a mile. But also we were talking about literally just a circle of neighbors that we put together those rules of how it works. You know, just here's the functionality of a cleanup. There is no budget for these cleanups, so it definitely is one of those more organized, just organize yourself and see how it goes. So we want to encourage cleanups both in terms of trash, mostly trash, and recycling is that what this committee is about, as opposed to vegetation management cleanups, which is another topic entirely.
Great, thank you. Do we have any public comment from within the building? Leo, do we have public comment on this item from those that are remote?
There's no hands raised at this time. Any of you, if you'd like to speak, please click the raise hand function right now. I think we can close this public comment period. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to Pocket Canyon area renaming ad hoc.
Very brief report.
It is yours.
It's fine. I've spent the last month trying to recruit people to my committee. I've had 6 people tell me that they're too busy to come to one meeting. I've managed to recruit 1 member today. And I also reached out to Jeanette to talk about this district and see if she had any ideas. Since she is moved from the district, she's no longer qualified, but she did give me a bunch of names. So we will be having 1 meeting sometime within the next month. And I want 1 person from each area. 1 person from Drake Road, who I have, 1 person from Vacation Beach, 1 person from Pocket Canyon, and anybody else who wants to join. So anybody who's within the sound of my voice, who'd like to volunteer for a 1 meeting wonder, maybe an hour and a half, to discuss this issue, I'd be more than willing to take you on. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, we have turning to committee members for comment. Member Grova, come on. Member Pereira. Member Namerson.
Thank you.
Member Thayer.
No.
And member States.
I appreciate the renaming. It's very confusing. Pocket Canyon is half Barstow and half Durnville. And so it is its own place on the map. And so I appreciate that you want to identify it, because identifying with the proper words really makes a difference for people feeling like they're included in something.
Exactly.
Very good. That concludes comments from the committee. Any comments from the
great public?
Our public. Seeing no public comment, we have turned over to Leo for remote comment.
Any members of the public online, please raise your hand if you'd like to speak. I'll also double check my inbox at this time to see if there's any comments that landed. I think you can proceed, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The staff report now is from Elise Whelan, District 5, District A. So Elise, front and center, please.
Wyland. Okay, I just have a few things. First thing is I would like to open up the discussion, and Pip will probably need to appoint an ad hoc committee to discuss the elections, the fall elections. We start working on recruiting new members in the summer, and then we have a selection process. Election is a misnomer. Selection process in the fall. We had some challenges last year, things that really need to be cleaned up and improved significantly. And so we'd like to have an ad hoc that will look at that with us and improve our election process, our selection process for this fall. So if anyone's interested in participating in that, please let me know, and or Tip, and he will appoint that that committee and let you know as soon as he gets some possible numbers. We also have openings on the 5th district for representatives for Supervisor Hopkins on the Planning Commission and the CDC. And as was mentioned with the ILRRMAC report in September, there will be an opening for ILRRMAC. So we encourage you to go and look on the boards and commissions page of the County of Sonoma website. Look at those openings if you are interested in issues like the housing element or land use or any of these things that people get very upset about in the Planning Commission for good reason. That might be a good place for you. If you are interested in housing for the homeless or affordable housing, those sorts of items, you might be interested in the CDC. If you're interested in law enforcement, ILR might be the place for you. So please take a look at the boards and commissions and see if that is of interest to you. There is an apply button on that website. You can apply at any time, and then when those openings are reviewed, we'll go through and pull out all the applications and look at those applications. Just to reiterate, the next governance committee meeting will be on June 3rd from 10 to 12 at the Burnville School. We're going to be presenting at that point the various options of governance tools that we're going to be looking at to apply to the areas of concern that have been brought up. So as you know, the first stage was having meetings, surveys, input on what people's concerns were about local services. The second step is trying to match governance tools with those concerns to figure out where are some options for us to try to meet those concerns. And then we'll have a third stage, which will be putting in the tax analysis of various options and all those sorts of things. So that meeting is going to be on June 3rd from 10 to 12. We will have Spanish language interpreters there. We will have breakout sessions discussion, and we'll have a whole number. So we encourage you to not only attend, but also to let everyone know in your neighborhood that this is going on and to participate, because it's once in a lifetime, once in a generation time for us to be looking at these important issues, and we really hope that everyone will participate and give us their feedback. Those are my updates. Anything else? Any questions for me?
We'll go to the roll call here with members. I'm going to start off on this one. You know, it's great that we can actually push out information to our local communities, but it's also more helpful if you have a QR code on your handout material, so that we post at post offices and so forth. People aren't required to copy down a 2-page URL. So if they could just use their camera to scan it, they will have the information. That's really helpful for us in the rural areas. So the addition of QR codes is just really, really important.
We'll make sure that's on there. Thank you.
That concludes my comment on that. So I will pass this on now to Member Van Dyke for her comments.
I have a question where that actually came up in the communications committee. We were wondering with the first governance meeting, you had all the reps from, you had PIC and you had Russian River Park and Rec, and you had people present at the beginning, you know, saying who they were and what they did. Did they actually help create the agenda for that? Or was there a planning meeting ahead of that? Or did you just invite them to make?
No, they were just invited to, it was an informational addition to the meeting. They did not participate.
We were just wondering.
Creating the agenda. The agenda was created by the Blue Sky consulting firm that we had hired, and then the District 5 team.
Okay, so thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Member Roca.
Well, the other question that we had in communications was, it was really good attendance.
Yeah.
And we wondered how they got it. So, you know, we wondered, did they go through these community organizations, or how did they get their list? Because we want to get more people and get more attendance at these meetings.
And we did set that up in that way. We one of the first things we did was to the stakeholders that we interviewed and worked through, we then provided information to and asked them to send it out through their various networks. And so one of the things that we often forget to do for the MAC meetings is to do the outreach to some of those community leaders and ask them to post through their meetings, and then ripples through.
We did though also have some folks who were upset about the big element, which did boost that.
Yes. Yeah, no, we also had, for example, we had 2 tables of from the Latino community that we don't usually get participation from, and that is because I spent a couple meetings at the with a group of Latino leaders, asking them specifically to bring in community members. So there was specific targeted outreach to groups in the area, and then they were able to present a little bit about their organization. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Pereira.
Yeah, I just. Breakout groups. Those are problematic in general, because a lot of times they're used to diffuse discussion. And a lot of people have had objections to them. I know we had objections to them being used when from the almost plan development we had in the years, when factory efforts, a lot of people either left the discussion at that point or objected to participation. So I'd like to find another way to achieve whatever we're trying to achieve with breakout groups without splitting up the meeting into smaller, less confrontational, less communicative groups.
That's interesting. I haven't heard that input at all. We didn't have anyone leave when we did breakout groups in the last meeting. Everybody stayed.
Yeah, I mean, I would say if you have suggestions, we're all ears, but I can tell you from personal experience that often not doing breakout groups, you wind up with a few folks who really dominate the discussion, who are the people who most feel comfortable speaking in front of a large crowd. And we saw this actually in Longview Bridge, sort of initial design meeting that we had at the Longview Community Center. And at that point, we actually had consultants, and they had little voting things and that people that handed out to people, and so people were able to cast their vote. And the really interesting thing was there were two people who kept dominating the discussion and sort of raising their hands and repeating themselves, and were really, really sort of vociferous about their opinions. And it turned out that they represented like 5% perspective in the room when we did the instant voting, that like the majority of people actually disagreed with them, but we didn't hear the 95% of people until they actually voted. And so that's one of the reasons that we often do small groups, is because people are generally more open, and you actually kind of get a better snapshot of where everyone is, instead of kind of having a few dominating personalities control the room, which has happened in multiple meetings.
Our plan for this next meeting is to have a combination of open discussion, polling, and breakout groups. So we should be able to cover both ways of doing it, because we will have full discussion time and breakout group times as well.
Yeah. And I'm always happy for, like, I enjoy a town hall format, but the problem is that if you do just like an open town hall, you really have to revert to the timing, and then people get really frustrated that they only have 2 or 3 minutes, and still some people don't necessarily feel comfortable coming forward. So it's just like, there's no perfect solution, but if you have any ideas, please let us know.
I think what happens is we go to breakout groups and then we don't come back together, and none of the feedback from the breakout groups gets back to the group in general.
So
a lot of ideas get lost in these breakout groups. A lot of really good ideas don't go any further, except in that one breakout group, and it doesn't do the job.
I totally agree with you. We did do that in the governance meeting, where there was one person who reported out what their breakout group said, and we kind of, compiled all of that. So that's one way of addressing that. But yeah, if there's other ways to compile that information and share it out, we're happy to work on that.
So that conclude your comment. Very good, thank you. Member Emerson.
A mundane question, Elise. What was CBC or CDC? What did it stand for?
What's the Community Development Commission? Thank you so much. Linda, do you have
Thank
any
you.
more
Okay.
about what the Community Development Commission does?
Yeah, it's really related to sort of affordable housing and homelessness. And in the past, actually, the CDC and the Community Development Commission in general had a number of programs that really benefited the Lower Russian River. They had sort of facade improvement programs and signage programs for downtown businesses. That's something we really miss that they no longer do. But I've heard interest in East County and doing that, so maybe something that we could bring back. They also do, the CDC also oversees the flood elevation program. But mostly on that committee, you're more overseeing sort of the affordable housing and some homelessness issues as well.
Thank you.
All right. Member Thayer.
Yes, at the first meeting of the governance study, it was indicated that at the second meeting that we would be presented with findings regarding the what it is that this area produces in terms of revenues, whether vacation or property that's, and compare that with the resources that we are getting from the county. And I didn't hear you mention that and describing what's going to happen on June 3rd, and that concerns me if that's not going to be part of the second meeting, because discussing what our options are in a vacuum to me doesn't make sense.
Well, there are 2 parts to this. One of the things that we've discovered in our meetings is that our financial data is voluminous and requires greater analysis. So we need more time with it. There are some key findings that we've come up with, and so in Supervisor Hopkins' initial remarks, she will talk about the overall TOT and some of those broad numbers. And our plan is to have the full financial analysis dedicated to some of the solutions we're pointing towards at the 3rd meeting. And the reason behind that is because in our conversations and in our pre-meetings, we found that it was more effective talking about the solutions before arguing over the numbers. The numbers are really compelling to argue about. And we felt that it would be more productive to start with the solution options and then go to the numbers.
Also, one thing to add, the numbers, it's something that I don't think you can absorb at one meeting with a visual presentation. We really need to have a report that's released sort of in advance of the meetings. We'll have an opportunity to review that. Otherwise, it's really a lot to absorb, because there are also nuances like what things do you and don't you include, and what are sort of general services, general county services that would be receiving regardless of whether or not you chose to incorporate. There's all these different questions. You can slice it and dice it a lot of different ways. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and also it's hard to provide numbers for 6 different options for every different option. We feel it's really important to get some narrowing down of what the possibilities are. Like if everybody says, wow, we really want to incorporate, then it's going to take a lot of diving to get what that would look like in terms of numbers. But if everyone rejects incorporation and says we want a council of governments and satellite offices, that's a whole different set of numbers. And so it's really important for us to get some feedback about what the possibilities of the tools before we provide a numeric scenario for everything. So it is a 2-step process. One is, Supervisor Hopkins will give some overviews of some of the big critical questions, like, are we getting screwed over, and is all our money getting, pulled up in the county from TOT and whatever, or is it we're really close to the bone and here are our options given that. So we will give some overview context for the numbers, and the deep dive will be coming later.
Okay, just so I'm clear, I wasn't so much talking about numbers attaching to different options. What will it cost you if you do X or Y? But I think there's great interest, and there certainly was in the first meeting, in understanding if this area is getting its fair share of county resources.
Yes.
And we really do need an answer to that before we start.
Yes, that will be covered.
Okay, thank you.
That general overview will be covered.
Very good. Then we move on to Member State.
Well, I like the governance meeting. It's sad that it's right exactly at the same time as the Forestful Parade starts. I don't know how I'm going to deal with that one. But I do appreciate the breakout groups as well, because like you say, people talk and have ideas and they feel counted. So I think that really does make a difference. And I appreciated the roundups of the summaries from each of the breakout groups at the last meeting. That was good. I was wondering if you had an update on the river confluence, the Respect Russian River. What's going on with that? Because we're heading into tourist season and we want to encourage people to respect our river. How's that going?
So exciting. I spent all last weekend sanding and painting a canoe. It's going to be used as a display. So on the 16th, the Board of Supervisors is going to be considering and hopefully signing the memorandum of understanding, which will be the official. We are now an organization. After all the couple of years of trying to develop the memorandum of understanding between the 18 different agencies we're working with. At that point, we also will have multiple stores, River Queen, Wine Vault, stores in Bedford Mills, carrying the merchandise for the Respect Russian River campaign. We will also have an updated website, which will provide volunteer engagement opportunities, so that as the press goes out and as people are going around the stores and buying the merchandise, seeing the poster, they will be able to take some action and get engaged in helping the river. So it's starting this month, and we're very excited to see it rolling out. And somebody said to me today, I was talking to someone and they said, I saw the bumper sticker out in town in Santa Rosa. So they are slowly but surely getting out there. And It's exciting.
Did they ever come up with a map of where to use a restroom and where to find trash cans?
It's on the list.
So it's not done yet.
I'm not done yet.
But I appreciate you doing it. Self, you know, I gotta pee. Where is it? Thanks.
Is that clear?
Okay, that's it.
Very good. Opening comments for the audience here. No public comment. Moving on for Leo for remote public comment.
Any remote commenters want to raise your hand at this time? Okay, there are no hands raised, so this concludes public comment on this item.
Very good. Then I have some closing comments. The next regular MAC meeting is scheduled for Thursday, June 8th, with the location to be announced in advance of the meeting. I want to thank all the participants for their comments and the council members for their input on matters before the Lower Russian River MAC this evening. You know, I was kind of musing on the attendance and the fact that with a low attendance, it probably means we must be doing our job. And that's one way of looking at it. And I think as Supervisor Hopkins well knows, a packed house generally means there are concerns that need to be addressed. So I think that we must be doing something right with a smaller audience. And with that, I call for a motion.
That's really listening.
For that, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Well, I want to make sure that we revisit the procedures of the meeting. I really think we need to have a second round of questioning for the board members. Once a first round, because we have a lot of follow-ups, and I think it really shortchanged the discussion. Not having follow-up questions.
The reason we didn't this evening, and I can answer that, we had a long agenda, and I appreciate your comment, I truly do. But we're running right now at 8:12, and we've been sitting here since 5:30, and all of the comments have been really, really important. We just learned
the partner. So the ones that were made, and that's a real life, right? Have a distinct problem.
Right. So the next chair will be handling the meeting, and so that'll be something you can take up with Tiff. All right, thank you. So with that, we have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
We have a second. Move to second, we adjourn this meeting.
Thank you. Yeah.
Voice acclamation vote, but we have to take a roll call vote, excuse me.
I think, or can we normally vote on adjournment?
Some boards do and some boards don't.
I
So,
think we haven't done that previously.
okay, so we waive the vote and we adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for
Bye.
ending.
Mike, you keep going.
What's that thing there?
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Right here, the very back. Right there's on the back end.